My scholarly article appeared in the Journal of Political Psychology in 2011, and it's authored by Joanne Esch, and it's called "The Legitimizing the War on Terror: Political Myth and Official Level Rhetoric." So basically, this piece of work argues that American elites use this specific mythologized rhetorical kind of plan and certain phrases uh, that constitute what the author refers to as political mythology, rhetorical mythology. And American elites use this myth building to reframe the war on terror in particular. And this war on terror includes drone strikes throughout North Africa, Sub Saharan Africa, and countries of the Middle East. In addition to this, there have been full scale acts of war by the West and the U.S. in general in the name of defeating terrorism. Uh, this reframing of this war on terrorism is done through kind of manipulation of public discourse, and it's intended to mobilize constituents in favor of aggressive military action and to also be in favor of restrictions on civil liberties through things such as the Patriot Act and NSA surveillance and any number of those things. So basically, the author argues that American elites, in this instance in the Bush administration, use notions of American exceptionalism and kind of civilization versus barbarianism. And so obviously civilization is viewed as the American way of life and the European way of life, and a lot of these Middle Eastern and African countries that are less developed are kind of painted as barbaric in a sense, kind of going back to imperialism and colonialist rhetoric and times. And essentially, the citizens of these countries are kind of framed as below Western people in priority and importance. And this reframing, this control over the public discourse regarding the war on terror, kind of serves to boost public support of war while simultaneously minimizing the seriousness of U.S. inflicted casualties, in particular civilian casualties. And further, elites basically maximize American victimhood and American deaths, and they kind of try to make us the ultimate victim. It's a classic tactic when trying to stir up public support for military aggression against an outside force or people. Also, it's fairly easy for American elites to do this because we know from Schatzsnyder that people are drawn to a fight and people are drawn to a conflict. And so they hear an elite say terrorists and we need to go kill them and find them, and they'll support essentially any action that the government wants to take. We also see in this article varying layers of conflict, similar to what Schatzsnyder describes in his work. Basically, we have the presenting level, which is us versus them mentality. You know, America needs to dominate the terrorist type mentality. That's just a presenting level, and that's what's typically fed to the public. Underneath that, you have a complex web of international relations, economic motivations, and power struggles on a global scale that are really the true determinants of the war. But this complex reasoning is not given to the public because it's the foundational kind of important stuff. Further, the author in this scholarly article is basically arguing that the elites kind of dehumanize entire sectors of the world population, in particular members of the Islamic faith. And this kind of flies right in the face of David Foster Wallace's perspective of having an open mind and seeing different perspectives and putting yourself in other shoes to an extent, showing some empathy. It's basically the opposite of what he calls for. This framing of Muslims as somehow alien or barbarian, it rejects Gandhian principles too that we learned about in class of arriving at just consensus solutions through recognizing human dignity, the innate human dignity of all people, and that every viewpoint and position has some aspect of the truth. We're not really looking to hear their side of the story, basically. So what we're seeing is elites making salient American victimhood while repressing and limiting the scope of the victimhood and casualties suffered by the people of Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen, Somalia, take your pick, any one of these countries known for terrorism. Also, all of this political myth-making, as described by the author, seems to be achieved at the surface presenting level of these Middle Eastern and African conflicts. The conversation remains that we are free and that's why they attack us, and very simplified, not really thought out reasoning. And basically, instead of navigating the complexities of international relations and power relations and so on and so forth, the public remains locked at this debate of a shallow level debate, basically.